When rivals became brothers. Frank Lucas' hidden humanity as gangster Americano. The name Frank Lucas conjures images of a ruthless drug lord, a man who built an empire on heroin, outsmarting the Italian mafia and corrupt cops alike. His story, immortalized in the film American Gangster, paints a portrait of a cunning, violent, and unapologetically ambitious criminal. Yet, beneath the veneer of the gangster Americano, lay a complex individual whose life was a tapestry woven with threads of brutal ambition, surprising loyalty, and a hidden humanity that often gets lost in the sensationalism of his legend. This is the story of Frank Lucas, the man who, in a world of cutthroat competition, sometimes found brotherhood in the most unexpected places, and whose life offers a profound, albeit dark, reflection on the human condition. The making of a gangster. Frank Lucas was born in La Grange, North Carolina, in 1930, into a world steeped in poverty and racial injustice. His early life was a crucible of hardship that forged the steel in his soul. He witnessed firsthand the brutal realities of the Jim Crow South, where a black man's life held little value. The most searing memory, one that would forever scar his psyche and fuel his future ambitions, was the murder of his 12-year-old cousin by the Ku Klux Klan. The crime went unpunished, a stark demonstration of the systemic racism and lawlessness that governed his youth. This traumatic event instilled in young Frank a deep-seated distrust of authority and a fierce determination to never again be powerless. He vowed that no one would ever control him or his destiny. Seeking an escape from the suffocating oppression of the South, Lucas migrated north, like millions of other African Americans during the Great Migration, landing in Harlem, New York, in the early 1940s. Harlem, a vibrant cultural mecca, was also a hotbed of illicit activity, a place where opportunity, albeit often illegal, could be found by those bold enough to seize it. It was here that Lucas began his education in the streets, learning the intricate dance of survival and power in a world far removed from the cotton fields of North Carolina. His true apprenticeship began under the tutelage of Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, the legendary Harlem crime boss. Bumpy was more than just a gangster. He was a strategist, a community figure, and a man who commanded respect not just through fear, but through intellect and a certain code of conduct. Lucas became Bumpy's driver, bodyguard, and eventually, his trusted protege. From Bumpy, he learned the nuances of the street game, how to negotiate, how to maintain order, how to deal with both rivals and law enforcement, and crucially, how to run a business. Bumpy taught him that true power wasn't just about violence, but about intelligence, organization, and maintaining a network of loyal individuals. Lucas absorbed these lessons, watching, listening, and planning his own ascent. When Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, a significant power vacuum opened in Harlem. Many expected the Italian mafia, who had long held sway over the city's drug supply, to simply absorb Bumpy's territory. But Frank Lucas had other ideas. He saw an opportunity, not just to fill Bumpy's shoes, but to revolutionize the entire drug trade. His ambition was audacious, his vision clear: cut out the middleman. The Italian mafia controlled the heroin supply coming into New York, marking it up significantly. Lucas realized that if he could source his own product directly, he could offer a purer, cheaper, and more potent drug, thereby cornering the market. This innovative, almost entrepreneurial, approach led him to Southeast Asia, specifically the Golden Triangle, the notorious opium-producing region. He established direct connections with opium growers and refiners, bypassing the traditional European and Italian mafia routes. His method of smuggling, famously depicted in American Gangster, as using the coffins of fallen American soldiers returning from Vietnam, was a stroke of macabre genius, though the exact details of this particular method remain debated. What is undisputed is that Lucas successfully imported vast quantities of high-purity heroin, which he branded Blue Magic. Blue Magic was a game-changer. It was purer than anything else on the streets, meaning users got a more intense high, and Lucas could cut it more times, multiplying his profits exponentially. He sold it at a lower price than his competitors, yet still made millions. This combination of purity, price, and potency quickly made him the dominant force in Harlem's drug trade. He built a sophisticated distribution network, employing family members and trusted associates, ensuring loyalty and discretion. The circumstances of Harlem in the late 1960s and early 1970s, marked by economic despair, social unrest, and a burgeoning drug epidemic, provided fertile ground for Lucas's enterprise to flourish. He exploited the desperation, offering an escape, however fleeting and destructive, to a community struggling for hope. Frank Lucas wasn't just a drug dealer. He was a criminal mastermind who understood logistics, supply chains, and market demand. He was a product of his environment, shaped by racial injustice and poverty, who chose to carve out his own version of the American dream, albeit through illicit means. His rise was a testament to his intelligence, his ruthlessness, and his unwavering determination to never be powerless again. He had made himself into a king, but in the dangerous world he inhabited, kings always had rivals. Frank Lucas's meteoric rise to power in Harlem did not go unnoticed, nor did it come without fierce opposition. His innovative approach to the drug trade, particularly his decision to bypass the traditional Italian mafia supply lines, was a direct challenge to the established order. The five families of New York, the Genovese, Gambino, Lucchese, Colombo, and Bonanno, had long considered the city, and indeed much of the East Coast, their exclusive territory for high-level drug trafficking. Lucas's blue magic was not just a product, it was a statement, a declaration of independence that threatened their immense profits and their long-held dominance. The initial response from the mafia was a mix of disbelief and disdain. How could a black man from Harlem, without their connections or their vast network, possibly compete? But as Lucas's purity and price points began to decimate their market share, disbelief turned to anger and disdain to outright hostility. The streets of Harlem, already a battleground for various factions, became even more volatile. Territorial disputes over corners, distribution routes, and protection rackets escalated into brutal violence. Lucas understood that to maintain his empire, he had to be as ruthless, if not more so, than his adversaries. He was known for his calm demeanor, but also for his swift and decisive retaliation against anyone who dared to challenge his authority. Beyond the Italian mafia, Lucas also faced competition from other ambitious black kingpins in Harlem. The most prominent of these was Leroy "Nicky" Barnes, often dubbed Mr. Untouchable. Barnes, a charismatic and equally ruthless figure, commanded his own formidable organization, the Council, and saw Lucas as his primary rival for control of Harlem's lucrative drug market. The rivalry between Lucas and Barnes was legendary, a clash of titans that often spilled into open warfare on the streets. Their conflict was not just about drugs. It was about pride, respect, and who would ultimately reign supreme in the Harlem underworld. The violence was often swift and brutal, a constant reminder of the high stakes involved. Betrayals were common, trust was a luxury, and survival depended on a combination of cunning, intimidation, and sheer force. Lucas navigated this dangerous landscape with a calculated precision. He understood that while violence was sometimes necessary, it was also a tool to be used strategically, not indiscriminately. He preferred to operate with a lower profile than many of his flashier counterparts, driving unassuming cars and avoiding ostentatious displays of wealth, at least initially. This allowed him to move more freely and avoid drawing undue attention from law enforcement. However, as his empire grew, so did the scrutiny. The constant threat from the NYPD and federal agencies was another ever-present enemy. Detective Richie Roberts, a tenacious and incorruptible Newark detective, became particularly obsessed with bringing Lucas down. Roberts, initially assigned to a task force investigating drug trafficking, saw through Lucas's quiet exterior and recognized the true scale of his operation. The cat-and-mouse game between Lucas and Roberts would become a defining aspect of their intertwined lives, a relentless pursuit that highlighted the stark contrast between their worlds, yet also revealed an unexpected connection. The cost of power for Frank Lucas was immense. The constant paranoia, the fear of betrayal from within his own ranks, the ever-present threat of violence, and the relentless pressure from law enforcement took a heavy toll. He lived in a world where loyalty was fleeting, and every handshake could conceal a dagger. The gangster persona he cultivated was not just for show. It was a necessary shield, a mask of invincibility that allowed him to command respect and instill fear. Yet, beneath that hardened exterior, the weight of his choices and the constant struggle for survival undoubtedly left their marks. He was at the top of a dangerous game, and the view from the summit was often a lonely one, surrounded by enemies, both seen and unseen. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about the intricate lives of figures like Frank Lucas. In the brutal, unforgiving world of organized crime, alliances are often temporary, born of convenience and necessity rather than genuine camaraderie. Yet, Frank Lucas's story reveals a fascinating dimension where, against all odds, some of his fiercest rivals eventually became something akin to brothers. This transformation wasn't born of sentimentality, but from a shared understanding of the game, a mutual respect for cunning and resilience, and sometimes, the sheer pragmatism of survival against common threats. The drug trade, particularly in the volatile 1960s and 70s, was a dynamic landscape. Power shifted, territories were contested, and new players constantly emerged. Lucas, with his direct supply chain and superior product, disrupted the established order, particularly that of the Italian mafia. While initial interactions were often violent and confrontational, Lucas's ability to stand his ground, to fight back effectively, and to maintain his market share eventually earned him a grudging respect from some of the mafia figures. He wasn't just another street dealer. He was a businessman who understood logistics and leverage. There were instances, not always widely publicized, where Lucas engaged in strategic negotiations with certain mafia families. These weren't friendships, but rather truces, agreements to coexist, or even temporary collaborations against a common external threat, such as an aggressive new crew or intensified law enforcement pressure. The code of the street, however twisted, sometimes dictated that even enemies could find common ground when facing a larger, existential threat. Perhaps the most complex and often misunderstood relationship was with Nicky Barnes. While American Gangster portrayed them as bitter, lifelong rivals, the reality was more nuanced. In the early days, before Barnes truly ascended, there were periods where Lucas and Barnes operated in the same ecosystem, sometimes even indirectly benefiting from each other's presence by creating a larger, more robust drug market in Harlem. While their rivalry eventually escalated into open warfare, leading to a bloody struggle for dominance, there were also moments where a shared understanding of their precarious positions as black kingpins in a predominantly white-controlled criminal landscape might have fostered a strange form of mutual respect. They were both fighting for a piece of the American dream, albeit through illegal means, and both faced the same systemic challenges from law enforcement and established criminal organizations. This shared struggle, the understanding of what it took to survive and thrive in their world, could, at times, transcend direct animosity. The turning points often came when external pressures mounted, when law enforcement intensified its efforts, or when new, more violent gangs emerged. The established players, even rivals, sometimes found it advantageous to de-escalate their internal conflicts. Lucas, with his strategic mind, was adept at identifying these moments. He understood that a united front, or at least a temporary cessation of hostilities, could be more beneficial than constant internecine warfare. These alliances weren't about friendship in the traditional sense, but about a shared understanding of the rules of engagement, a recognition of each other's power, and a pragmatic decision to work together, or at least not against each other, for mutual benefit. The brotherhood that emerged from these rivalries was not one of affection, but of shared experience and a common understanding of the brutal realities of their lives. They were all outlaws, operating outside the bounds of conventional society, constantly under threat. This shared identity, this mutual struggle against a larger system, could forge bonds that, while not always peaceful, were undeniably strong. It was a brotherhood born in the crucible of the streets, where respect was earned through strength, cunning, and survival. Frank Lucas, the gangster Americano, understood this dynamic intimately, and it was this understanding that allowed him to navigate a world of enemies and, at times, turn them into reluctant, yet effective, allies. To view Frank Lucas solely as a ruthless drug lord is to miss the profound complexity of the man. Beneath the hardened exterior, the calculated violence, and the immense wealth acquired through illicit means lay a hidden humanity, a man driven by powerful, often contradictory, impulses. His life was not just about accumulating power and money. It was also deeply intertwined with his family, his community, and a personal code of loyalty that, however twisted, defined his actions. At the core of Frank Lucas's humanity was his unwavering devotion to his family. His mother, Mahalia Lucas, was a central figure in his life. He moved her to a lavish home in North Carolina, showering her with gifts and ensuring her comfort. This desire to provide for his mother, to lift her out of the poverty he had known, was a powerful motivator. He wanted to give her the life she never had, a life free from the indignities and hardships of the Jim Crow South. His marriage to Juliana Farrate, a former beauty queen from Puerto Rico, also revealed a softer side. He was fiercely protective of her and their children, striving to create a stable, opulent environment for them, even as the foundations of that life were built on the shifting sands of the drug trade. He saw himself as a provider, a patriarch, and his criminal enterprise, in his own mind, was a means to an end, securing his family's future and protecting them from the systemic injustices he had experienced. Beyond his immediate family, Lucas also maintained a complex relationship with his community in Harlem. While he was undoubtedly a purveyor of a destructive substance, he also saw himself, and was often seen by some, as a benefactor. He was known for his generosity, giving back to the poor, providing jobs, albeit illegal ones, and helping those in need. He was not a flashy gangster in the mold of some of his contemporaries. He often dressed modestly, preferring to blend in rather than stand out. This allowed him to maintain a certain level of respect and even affection within parts of the community, who viewed him as a Robin Hood figure, a man who took from the system that had oppressed them and redistributed it, in his own way, to his people. This perception, however flawed, was crucial to his ability to operate and maintain a network of loyal individuals who believed in him, or at least benefited from his presence. Lucas's loyalty extended to his crew and those who showed him respect. He ran his organization with a strict code, demanding absolute fidelity, but also offering protection and financial security to those who proved trustworthy. Betrayal was met with swift and brutal consequences, but loyalty was rewarded. This created a powerful bond within his inner circle, a sense of belonging and purpose in a world that often offered neither. He had a deep-seated belief in honor, even if his definition of honor was shaped by the harsh realities of the streets. Yet, this life of power and illicit wealth came with immense vulnerabilities and an emotional toll. The constant stress of managing a vast criminal empire, the paranoia of being betrayed or caught, the ever-present threat of violence, all weighed heavily on him. There were moments when the facade of the ruthless gangster must have cracked, revealing the man beneath, burdened by the choices he had made and the consequences they entailed. He lived with the knowledge that his freedom, his family's security, and his very life hung by a thread. This constant pressure, the need to always be one step ahead, undoubtedly contributed to a profound sense of isolation, even amidst his wealth and power. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on the complex morality of figures like Frank Lucas. In his own justification, Lucas likely believed he was providing opportunities and a form of justice in a system that had failed his community. He saw himself as a self-made man, a survivor who had risen from nothing to become a king, albeit in a kingdom built on vice. The stark contrast between the ruthless drug lord who ordered violence and the devoted family man who cared deeply for his mother, wife, and children is a testament to the intricate and often contradictory nature of human character. Frank Lucas was not a simple villain. He was a product of his environment, a man who navigated a morally ambiguous world with a complex blend of ruthlessness and a hidden, undeniable humanity. If you're finding this deep dive into Frank Lucas's life compelling, please hit the like button. The empire Frank Lucas built, formidable as it was, could not last forever. The relentless pursuit by Detective Richie Roberts, who had meticulously pieced together the puzzle of Lucas's operation, eventually led to his downfall. In January 1975, a massive raid by federal agents and local police brought Lucas's reign to an end. His homes in Teaneck, New Jersey, and La Grange, North Carolina, were simultaneously raided, and he was arrested. The scale of his operation, the sheer volume of heroin he had imported, and the immense wealth he had accumulated shocked the nation. It was a stark reminder of the pervasive reach of the drug trade and the audacity of one man to challenge its established order. Facing decades in prison, Lucas made a decision that would forever alter his legacy and the lives of many others. He chose to cooperate with the authorities. This was a controversial move, seen by many in the criminal underworld as the ultimate betrayal. However, for Lucas, it was a pragmatic choice for survival, a calculated risk to reduce his sentence and perhaps, in his own way, to find a path towards some form of redemption. His cooperation led to the indictment and conviction of over 100 individuals, including many corrupt NYPD officers who had been on his payroll, as well as other drug dealers. This act of exposing systemic corruption within law enforcement was a significant, albeit morally ambiguous, contribution. During this period of cooperation, an unlikely bond began to form between Frank Lucas and Richie Roberts. The detective who had relentlessly pursued him became a key figure in his post-arrest life. Roberts, impressed by Lucas's intelligence and his willingness to expose corruption, became his lawyer and advocate, helping him navigate the legal system. This relationship, central to the narrative of American Gangster, was a testament to the complex human connections that can emerge even from the most adversarial circumstances. It was a bond built on mutual respect, an understanding of each other's codes, and a shared desire for a form of justice, however different their paths to it. Lucas was eventually sentenced to 70 years in prison, but his cooperation led to a significant reduction. He served approximately 5 years before being released in 1981. However, his attempts to go straight were short-lived. In 1984, he was arrested again for attempting to sell heroin, leading to another 7-year prison sentence. This second fall from grace highlighted the immense difficulty of shedding the gangster label and escaping the gravitational pull of a life of crime. Upon his final release from prison in 1991, Lucas genuinely attempted to transform his life. He became an informant for the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, using his intimate knowledge of the drug trade to help authorities combat it. He also became an advocate against drug use, speaking to at-risk youth and sharing his cautionary tale. He often appeared alongside Richie Roberts, a powerful symbol of their unlikely alliance and a testament to the possibility of change. Frank Lucas's impact on crime history is undeniable. His innovative methods of drug trafficking, his direct challenge to the Italian mafia's dominance, and his role in exposing police corruption left an indelible mark. He forced a re-evaluation of how drug operations were conducted and how law enforcement pursued them. His story, brought to a wider audience by the film American Gangster, cemented his place in popular culture, sparking debates about the glamorization of crime and the complex realities of urban life. His lasting legacy is a complicated one. He was a ruthless criminal who caused immense suffering through the distribution of heroin. Yet he was also a devoted family man, a shrewd businessman, and, in his later years, a voice against the very lifestyle he once embraced. He was a product of systemic injustice who found power through illicit means, and then, in a strange twist, contributed to exposing the corruption within the system that had once oppressed him. Frank Lucas's life is a powerful, often uncomfortable, narrative about ambition, survival, and the enduring human capacity for both destruction and, ultimately, a yearning for redemption. His story reminds us that even in the darkest corners of society, the lines between good and evil, rival and brother, are often blurred, revealing a hidden humanity beneath the most formidable exteriors. Subscribe for more content that uncovers the true stories behind legendary figures. If you found this story insightful, please like and comment to support our channel and help us bring more untold histories to light.